Hey, welcome to Prepper Talk Radio. We are the podcast for the prepared with your hosts, Scott, Shane, and Paris in the house. Welcome, everyone, to our weekly live.
Happy to be here.
It's awesome. Excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. You sounded like so monotone. Excited.
I'm so excited. Well, we're coming off our recorded, and I just love it. I'm kind of got some excitement going, so we'll move along. This topic is going to be a good one.
It was a
We're
little
going to
more
have
exciting
some
than
fun
that,
with this one for sure.
Grab your popcorn, your bullets, your bean dips, and your whatever else you want to get, because this is going to be a wild and hairy topic tonight. We're gonna be diving into mobs, looters, shooters, and everything else that you need to be aware of. We've covered this topic before in little bits and pieces throughout the history of the podcast, but wanted to take it a little step further this time. Talk a little more in detail about what we really need to be doing. That it's going to get bad. Like when things get bad and you're in a danger zone, it's going to get bad. So let's talk about it. But before we talk about it, don't forget to go check out our friends. You might need them more than ever. If things go sideways and you don't have medications, you're going to be in a world of hurt. You can get your emergency medical prescriptions and even some extended up to year-long backups over at our friends with Jase Medical. Go to jase.com. Use the code PrepperTalk to save $10 at checkout. Guys, I've got my kit. I know these guys have their kits. Emergency antibiotics will come in handy. And if you don't have them, you'll wish you had them. Mm-hmm. All right, guys, let's fire it up. Let's see what we got for tonight. It is chat's already going hot. Appreciate everybody that's already in there. Whited, Theodora, Mike. We've got some notable names in there already commenting. It's Wednesday. Let's dump some info. What are we gonna?
Well, for me, this can be a pretty short podcast. When it comes to mobs in particular, looters, that's a little more complicated. But for mobs, just be observant and stay away. End the podcast, right? Just don't be there. Be observant, make your plans, stay away. And end the podcast.
I think honestly though, we got to dig a little deeper though.
No doubt.
But live in areas where you can't, like you're right in the thick of it. For example, when we had in New Orleans, the most famous of hurricanes hit, Katrina, decimating the area, and then we had looters and we had breaking and entering, we had mobs, we had all kinds of problems down there, and it was devastating. Right? The local government was trying to come in and say, "Hey, no, give us your guns and we'll protect you." But yet the bad actors, the bad neighbors and other such, they're like, yeah, give them your guns so we can take all your other stuff.
Right.
They when things go sideways, capitalist pigs will jump in and try to capitalize on everything. There's a element of our population that just wants to take no matter what. And if there's opportunity, they'll take it. If they recognize you as weak, they'll exploit you. And so we've got to talk about that as well. But absolutely, it is going to be, it could be a very short podcast, but we've got to get to the point where we're okay dealing harshly in reality with bad people.
Yeah, I feel like a theme for tonight would be FAFO. And there's a lot of people out there that are, they say, come to our city, and do that here. A lot of conservatives and constitutionalists and Second Amendment people are like, try that here, And the reality is that we need to defend our property. And that's written into our laws for self-defense to defend our property, our person, and even our immediate persons or immediate people around us. We can defend them and defend their property legally and under the law of self-defense. But at the same time, there's a reality psychologically to, are you really prepared to engage in a physical confrontation with a bunch of people? I mean, when you have a mob mentality, it's lemmings running over the cliff, and it's like, you can't stop them. It's just a mass hysteria. And it's like, how do you quickly, de-escalate that to and have a conversation. Say, hey, look, let's not get kinetic here. We don't have to. Let's communicate. Let's talk. But it's too late after you have a mob, and so now it's, I got to go straight to kinetics with some of these things. And so, to me, my first line of defense is to have something that's non-lethal, and then have obviously the best outcome for any fight is to not have a fight at all, or to avoid it entirely, which is what you said, Shane. Just stay away from madness. But if somebody comes into your, like if you're downtown and you're shopping and all of a sudden just a bunch of mob people come, I mean, we see, for example, and I don't know if I can explain all the examples, but like right now there's a bunch of people that walk out onto highways and try to block your car. They block your street. They just stand there. They sit. What do we do? What would you do if you were, faced with that dilemma in front of you? And how would you handle that? And unfortunately, it's a reality thankfully I haven't had to deal with it, but I see it so often on social media where people are getting involved with these protesters in that way. And it's like, wow, what would I do if I had to deal with that?
Yeah, especially depending on what state you're in. You look at California and the fires, and what a difficult situation that is, to where you've evacuated your home and then the looters come in, right?
Yeah.
Dressed as authorities or whomever. And, that's going to take some unique preparations that way. Or just be able to get everything out, right? I don't know that, have a lot of answers for these questions. I don't know what I would do if I come on the freeway. I know what I'd want to do, right? I don't know what I would actually do. And, like I mentioned, that I think the first, and like you mentioned, Paris, the first line of defense is to stay away from those types of areas. I have no reason really to go downtown. I'm on the freeway regularly, right? We don't have a threat of wildfires here like California does. And so I think the first step is proper planning, proper preparation, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing what the possibilities are when you go somewhere, go prepared. I always say go heavy. And I think that means go heavy on your person as well, right? With your EDC. And so that's always, for me, the first step. Okay, we're going to go with the family. We're going to go on a little outing. We're going to go downtown. What are the possibilities? And at that point, be observant and watchful. And then if something is happening or if there's a slight risk, get out. I mean, if you're watching, you can see, look, there's a curious group of people over there heading this way. Let's go the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be that simple. And that's kind of why I was kind of joking. This could be a really short conversation, is to avoid those areas. We talk about strategic relocation all the time. If you're in a place that has unacceptable risks of fire or earthquake or whatever that you're not prepared or you don't want to prepare for, then relocate, right? Make those decisions in advance before you find yourself in unaware and unprepared and oblivious to what's going on. I think those are the people who typically get hurt in those situations.
Well, and that's like the example of the people who are always looking at their phone, or they've always got their iPod, their earbuds in. They're always distracted no matter where they are, right? Those are the helpless victims because they've made themselves such, right? When I go out to eat with my wife, it's always, okay, let me sit where I'm at a vantage point where I can see the exits, the entrances, and see what's going on. I saw a post recently about that, and it was funny because it was a group of people who were saying, well, I don't understand why guys want to sit with their back to the wall so they can see everything. Even if that's the more comfortable seat, that should be the girl's seat. And I'm like, these girls have no idea. Like these ladies who are arguing this have no idea. And then one lady popped in, she's like, well, having been in a restaurant who actually had an active shooter, I am so glad my husband sat on that side. He has his he's following the laws, and he has his concealed carry permit. And he, before the shooter was able to get off a few rounds, was able to get up and engage him from a place of safety while also pushing me under the table. I would have had no clue, nor would I
That's
have been
awesome.
aware of what's going on. So I am eternally grateful that he was able to do something and that he likes to sit in a position where he can do that. I don't know the accuracy of her story, but to see her post and her comment on that, I was like, dude. And everyone else on the comments like, yeah, but how often does it happen? I'm like, one time is too many.
Yeah. You
You know,
don't want
I
to be
know
the
when we
you don't
go
want
out
to be
to eat
have
as
to be
a
the
group-
one time you didn't do it, and then you're like, what the heck?
Well, when we go out as a group, when we meet up, it's like, who's going to sit where, and where are you going to watch? All right, what's my
It's not
vantage
3
point?
seats facing the door. When I'm
Right.
not
Yeah,
sitting
we-
next to you guys.
We all
All
sit
three
in
of
the
us-
booth that's in the corner.
If all three of us had the opportunity, we'd all sit in a little straight line against the back wall where we could see everything at the same time. And
And of course,
Yeah.
we meet at a gun store, a gun shop, right? A
We
shooting
always
range.
do.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, of course, another thought along these same lines, following this kind of same discussion, is verbal skills are really important. If you find yourself where you haven't already escaped, you weren't observant, you missed out on what was coming, what do you do next? If you're confronted, do you have their verbal skills, the self-confidence in your skills as whether you're carrying a firearm, whether you know martial arts or so forth? Do you have those skills and are confident to and know how to de-escalate a situation? One thing I was thinking is, we talk about being the gray man, blending in. And so maybe this is the opportunity where you turn your head around and you're like, yo, let's do this, and you jump in with them and then you escape, right? So thinking about different techniques, you guys didn't even flinch there. You wouldn't laugh or anything.
I
that
was actually
dumb or was
thinking
that-
along the same lines.
yeah. I can just imagine Shane like engaging the bad guy like that.
Yo,
Dude, let's
anyway.
go.
No, I
Well-
would probably not be as clear-headed. And the thing is, you've got to know yourself. And one thing I've come to learn, I've been carrying for a lot of years.
Mhm.
And I've really gotten to know myself and my confidence with my skills and training and so forth. And knowing that when I get into a sticky situation or something that is a little dangerous, my heart starts beating, my brain kind of shuts down, my vision narrows, and I recognize this about myself. And so
Mhm.
I have specifically switched to a different firearm for that reason. I carry certain things, and that's one reason I also, like you say, sit facing a door. So I can, while my mind is calm and I'm composed and I'm being observant, can make those decisions before my brain has to think quickly. Because I'm not really good at that. I need
Mhm.
more practice under pressure. And that's what it takes. It takes practice. And if you think, like you say, Scott, many times you say, you'd only rise to your level of training, not what you
Only
aspire
fall to your level of training.
You're only going to fall or rise, whatever you want to call it. So,
Well, okay. Now going back, we talked about de-escalation just briefly, but like talking to people, communicating, engaging them where they are, and diffusing a situation. Right? You can't do that with mobs.
right.
As an individual, you cannot de-escalate or diffuse a mob.
Mhm. I mean, if you're in your house and you got a guy come in and who's looting, and you're there, and it's just one guy, maybe. But if it's a group, good luck with that.
Well, and the other thing is like there's been in different communities across the United States, there's been groups where they show up and you can see one or two at the door, and they're like trying to get in. They're trying to get in, and people will actually engage them, and then a bunch of other guys show up, pop around the corner, and there's a problem.
Mhm.
That's happened a couple times here in Utah, and it's like, don't go engage them, right? Diffuse the situation if possible. But if you open the door to let them in or to step out to try to engage them, you're putting yourself at danger and your family.
Yeah.
Right? If you pop them through the window, that causes bigger problems you got to deal with. And we won't get into those details, but de-escalation and diffusing situations only works when you have the ability to have an exchange. When people move to a mob mentality, right? People are great individually. They're horrible as a group. That mob mentality, that riot mentality, when people start seeing, oh, we're flipping cars, they go nuts.
Mhm.
You want to be as far away from that as possible, and you don't want to stand out if you're stuck in it.
But I think one thing to consider is that these people, they're cowards.
Mhm.
That's why they're in a group. They would never do these types of things individually.
Yeah.
And so that's what gives them the power as a group. And so I think maybe part of that that planning, that preparation could be knowing how to first of all know how to fight, be in good physical condition. I think it's important to be able to sprint away from danger, but also just having, again, kind of not the verbal skills, but have the attitude of being ready to rumble, right? The confidence in showing that you're not an easy target, right? That you're a hard target. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, depending on the size of the mob, I think a lot of the times it's not going to matter. But if it's a handful of guys, you can still be called a mob. If you're showing some confidence and there's really not one of these guys that really has it all together, looking the hard target, I think is a good deterrent.
It goes back to predators are always looking for prey.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And they always have in these types of situations, there's always the ringleader and the clowns. And the clowns are just smashing and doing whatever they want to do. The ringleader just rally cries them to get to a point of insanity where it's out of control. And oftentimes they'll sit back and just enjoy it while everyone else is doing all the problems. And it's no matter what, it's a dangerous place to be in. So you've got to learn or drill getting out of bad environments. The same, and as Theodore actually posted this in the chat, situational awareness, right? Home defense should be drilled like evacs. You should drill these things. And if you can't just go out and drill it, mentally practice it. Sitting quietly and mentally practicing what you would do is nearly as effective as actually drilling it. Visioning and going through that process helps do it. But if you skip it altogether, you're getting zero practice.
It's been a while since we brought up Jordan Peterson, so I'll do the honors. And it reminds me of that idea of men need to have the capacity to be monsters, and not that we are dangerous, but we need the capacity to be dangerous, because when a mob comes at our family, we need to be able to defend it to the death if necessary. And I think that if you have some looters coming at your house, you need to defend your house. I think we learned a pretty big lesson with, I can't remember where it was, but it was Kyle Rittenhouse. And I don't know if I'm going to get, if our video is going to get tagged for saying his name, but he showed up to protect the property of the people that he knew. He had I don't know the whole story, but from what I understand, he was friends of his owned that store, and he went down there to protect it. And he ended up taking some lives. And it was found out after way too much legal lawfare, if you will, that he was then exonerated and he was let go, and he was, vindicated for his self-defense. And so that's a big thing when I want to kind of differentiate between mobs and looting when we still have a potential for law to come after us, like that situation, or it's EMP, grids down, nothing's happened, like nobody's coming to save you, and you got to defend your stuff
without your rule of law. Yeah, without any rule of law.
So there's nobody coming after. Like if you took some dudes out, there's like no legal system that's going to be established for a long time to even worry about what you did or didn't do. And if you have a situation where your city is under a siege by a mob or looters, and you know that it's the only city and the rest of the state's fine, I think it's a little different scenario. I wouldn't be as bold as a Kyle Rittenhouse kind of guy, because I wouldn't want to have to deal with the consequences afterwards. I don't have money to pay for that, and I don't think he did either. But now he's doing pretty well. But the point is that it's different. But if it's a complete zombie apocalypse and SHTF's happened, and there's a roving band of robbers and looters coming through my town's next, you better darn well know I'm going to put up some turrets. I'm going to put up some defense systems. I'm going to get my neighbors involved. I'm going to say, hey, we got to defend ourselves against this roving band of looters and robbers that's coming through, and we're going to take them out. It's kill or be killed at that point, And so I don't know if that's a differentiator for you guys to say, hey, if it's, I would do something differently in a mob or looting mentality when society was still intact in some way, or other parts, or if it was completely destroyed, like society was not coming back for a long time. Like, how would you deal with those mobs and looters? And I think it's different anyways.
Yeah. And I agree with you there. I think it really, it depends on the state of the law. If there's no rule of law, or if there's excessive rule of law, or what. Also keep in mind, we have the right to defend ourselves, regardless. So, but the question is, and I'm not an attorney, and I don't know the law, and it's different in every state, but we can use deadly force when we feel deadly force is being used against us. When we feel an imminent threat, I think is the right word, right
Correct.
term. If there's an imminent threat, then yes, I feared for my life, and so I defended myself. And that's a one-on-one. But when it comes to a mob or a looters who are out there, particularly, and probably are possibly armed, and they're taking away, or they intend to take away your only way to survive. They want to take your food, they want to take your supplies, your whatever you have. And without them, if you think, okay, without these supplies, our family is going to die. That is an imminent threat, in my opinion. I think in the law's opinion as well, that, typically if there's rule of law, okay, steal my stuff, I'm just going to get away, take my stuff. And I don't want to kill somebody over stuff, right? Over a car or whatever it might be. I don't want that, and it's not that big a deal. But if it is an SHTF situation and we need those supplies to survive, then yes, it does, as I understand it, warrant deadly force to protect your things at that
property.
point. Yeah, your property, what you need to survive.
So yes. However, you also have to look at your current state of affairs, your current level of training, your current level of knowledge, right? If you have a group that's coming and you haven't connected with your neighbors to create a defensive line, and you haven't set up traps and pinch, I forget, I'm losing the terminology here, but
pinch points,
choke points,
yeah,
right? Choke points to line them up. Like, you have to be a superior force if you're going to try to stay there. You absolutely have to be a superior force. If you alone are not a superior force, you're ending your life. Like,
at that point, it's a choice whether you're going to say, I'm going to retreat.
I'm going to go down fighting.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm going to go Tombstone style and just see what happens, right? But if at all possible, that's what we need to look at, is like, okay, are these bands, are these gangs, are these mobs, are they going door to door to try to take people out, to try to steal resources? Like, that's where you've got to work now to get yourself in physical condition and mental condition, as well as practice with your sidearm and your primary weapons, your secondary weapons, so that you know what you're doing and know what to do, but also that your group and network know what to do as well. And then you have a backup comms, and then you have a notification system so you can see when people are getting too close, right? You can be aware before it's on your doorstep.
Another thing that's interesting is that even if you study history a little bit, you'll see that, you might say, well, one of the things that always shocked me is when an army captures another army, and that army is up, they're marching them somewhere to back to the prisoner, they're prisoners of war, and they're marching it back. Sometimes those armies the prisoners will break out and try to escape. And even to the point where they run at a wall of swords, like the first guy that's running is going to get killed for sure. But then the guy, gets around that. The second, third, fourth, fifth guy gets around that and gets free. And so to me, it's like, yeah, if you have one person, you're a single shooter and you're taking care of your property, and you got a couple hundred people coming at you, you might be able to deter 10 or 20, but you got hundreds of people. Like, they'll overpower you eventually. and in my opinion, maybe they won't. I don't know. There's probably some circumstances where that may or may not happen. But to me, just statistically speaking, that they will eventually overpower you unless you have a team, a group, a community, something that will help you. I think individuals can deal with individuals. Mobs, you need a group. You need to have not necessarily your own mob, but kind of maybe have your own mob. Have your own mob that you can defend against the mobs of looters and rioters. If that makes sense.
Yeah, and Mike's question here: what would I do? So when looters come through after fire weather event, what would I do? If I'm home, absolutely, I'm going to be there to defend it, and I'm going to harden, and I already have. This is part of what I've done for my home, is to make my home more defendable, harden it against entry, the doors, windows, and so forth, and stand my ground. Now, obviously, there are some potentially questionable legal things that could be problems you could have. If you're within your home, you're far better off than if you're outside your home, right? So if people are trying to break into your home, you're far more protected again with that castle doctrine. But then again, it's choice. Do I want to kill somebody if they're coming in to steal my food and it's not WROL? It's not without rule. It's not SHTF. However, we also have to keep in mind that there are groups out there that are former military, that are trained, that have banded together. They have all the gear. They have all the techniques. And they're not preppers. They're werewolves. They're going to be out in bands dominating because they have the techniques, they have the firepower, and they know what they're doing, and they're highly skilled. I hope that never happens in my neighborhood, in my area. But there's really, honestly, not a whole lot I could probably do unless I also have the support system of the people. But I think in general, let people loot. It's in my opinion, just get out of the way. In most cases nowadays, right? If it's SHTF and my family's life is in danger because of that, whether it's like I say, whether it's you're taking our supplies and we won't be able to support ourselves or take care of ourselves, then yes, it's deadly force. But really key for me is to harden the home. There are a lot of really simple things you can do, and we can talk about those types of things. And then there's some pretty inexpensive ways to make your home really well hardened as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, because
there was a battle. It was basically the Marines and I can't remember who else, but it was like, I want to say maybe it was Battle Pelelua, where basically the Japanese wanted to take this island near the Philippines. I don't know if that's the right battle or not, but basically the Marines on the island were so outgunned and so outnumbered that the U.S. forces are kind of like, we're not going to get there in time. Peace out. Good luck. And left them to what they thought was going to be their demise in one battle. But it ended up being the sequence of incursion after incursion after incursion. The Japanese were like, how can we not take these forces? Well, it's because the Marines and those on the island were like, we will not lose, right? You have to make a decision before you go into battle that you will not lose. You will do everything you have to. And they were like, these guys are the scariest guys we've ever encountered, were some of the comments. I listened to a documentary on this a few months ago, and I'm just like, it was absolutely astounding. But the takeaway that I want to relate to us here is like, if you're not prepared to make those decisions and take those actions, Shane's right, 100% leave. If it's just a looter situation, get out of the way. When we talk about like local disasters and situations like that, that's why we talk about relocation, tactical relocation. Move back to someone else in a different city, right? Someone within your network where it's safer. Don't just sit in harm's way. But if it's post SHTF, if it's an area of lawlessness and there's no where to go for help, you've got to become the most fierce version of yourself. Jordan Peterson talks about people who are harmless versus people who are monsters, right? Paris probably has the quote keyed up and ready to go, but you're not, basically, if you're not bridling your monster, then you're not really kind. You're not really. I'm trying to find. I'm looking. I'm losing the words. But you've got to know that there's a monster in you, and you've got to be able to act on that. But then you've also got to bridle it until he's needed, or she's needed, and that's the case for these mobs and looter situations. Avoid it if all possible. But post SHTF, eliminate, suppress, and destroy.
Yeah, it's FAFO at that point,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, defend your resources, essential to life. If it is inevitable or unavoidable that you'll lose them, then that's when you can truly defend yourself. I mean, according to the laws, I understand it.
And at some point, all of us, or most of us, anybody that has a Christian background or upbringing or morality that way, you might think to yourself, well, we're commanded not to kill. However, there's plenty of evidence throughout the scriptures that talk about that in defense of your own life, your liberty, your children, your spouse. It's absolutely okay to defend yourself even to bloodshed. And there's plenty of examples of that throughout the whole thing. So, if you're at a position where like, man, I don't know if I could take someone's life, that's legit. That's legit. You don't want to have to be in that position, but if it's you or them, hopefully you have the strength to say it's going to be them. And the fight is in you to be able to take care of that and protect your family. I can't imagine being in a position where I have to take someone else's life in order to defend my own family. But at the same time, I feel like I could do it. And we all have to get to that point mentally where we can do that. And that's even just, shooting a gun, or it's, taking somebody out physically where you got to maybe get, punching them in the couple, where you're doing something up close, stabbing, whatever. I don't want to get too graphic, but you got to be able to take care of business. And if somebody's going to come in and take my property, they're going to have to put up a fight, because I'm willing to. And that's another thing too. If looters don't usually have the forethought to bring defensive weapons with them. And of course you don't want to be the one guy who decides to go pull the TV out of the looter's hands and he's got a gun in his back pocket and he lets you have the TV and shoots you, so you got to be careful, because you don't know if the looters might have weapons themselves. They might be there to just, grab and go, but they also may have some ways to defend themselves. And just be careful about that, because if you get into a gunfight over a TV or something the problem with the gunfights is that bullets flying back at you, so you got to watch out for that. That's all I'm saying is, so if I was in a situation where let's say I drive up, going back to that example of if I'm on the freeway and somebody's in the middle of the road, I would probably inch my car up slowly and maybe get out and move them to the side. And then I would do some of the same things that I've seen people do and just drive around them if I can. I don't want to run somebody over. I don't know what the ramifications are of the laws of that. But at some level, it's like, if you're dumb enough to sit in the road, like, you kind of deserve to get run over in a way. Like, come on, dude. Like if you made the choice to be in the road,
block traffic, especially on the freeway, you're choosing to take the risk of being run over.
Yeah.
Right. It's the FAFO mindset. I've got to make a correction. It was actually the Battle of Wake Island in 1941 that I was referring to. The Marine stand, 760 sailors, 2 fighter squadrons, completely outmatched, outgunned in every way. If you have a chance, go read that story or watch anything on it. It is absolutely fascinating. But yeah, if going back to your point, like, every situation is going to be different. You've got to approach it with the mindset of, I've got to keep my family safe, no matter, like, first and foremost is the safety of my family. And if you're going around looking for a fight, you might as well sit on the freeway and try to stop traffic.
That's when the law is no longer on your side either.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But
neither is God.
Yeah.
Like, if you want a miracle, you need to behave in a way that warrants a miracle.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
in the scriptures, in the book of Revelation, I think it talks about those who live by the sword will die by the sword. And so that to me is somebody who's willing to, looking for a fight. They're out attacking.
yeah,
They're going to live by the sword. I'm going to go
it's not
attack and I'm going
defensive.
to take what's mine. You're going to die by the sword in that
Yeah.
case. If you're someone who's defending your property, you're not looking for a fight, but when fights come, you confront those things and you stand up to that. That's totally different. That's something where God's going to be on your side, in my opinion.
What do I do if I've got Tongan battle clubs? Like, and I don't have a sword. Like, what are my
You can
options?
use the Tongan battle club. You can
Is that
definitely.
okay? I can go offensively that way.
Well,
Yeah, no, probably not.
Paris, I was going to say, the one of the 10 Commandments, "Thou shalt not kill." I think its actual correct translation is "Thou shalt not murder."
Yeah,
Depending,
the Hebrew is
depending
the
on
word
the
is murder.
translation, there's so many different translations of the Bible, and so anyway, I won't go into that anymore. But I was also thinking that there's definitely a difference between mobs and looters. Mobs are not necessarily organized and looking to loot stuff. They do end up looting as well. Mobs can be looters, right? And looters are individual or in mobs in larger groups. It seems like looters have more of a plan, right? They know where they're going. They have a plan. Okay, what we're going to do? We're going to run in. We're each going to grab an armful of these goods and run out, right? What do they call those?
Opportunist?
Flash mob, right?
Oh, flash mob.
Whether it's a good flash mob, practice your singing voice type of flash mob, or
a bad flash mob.
Flash, and so those go very quickly, right? Typically, and so a good strategy can be, watch your exits, go to the back, right? Get out quickly, or just stay out of the way, right? But of course, I go back to thinking about the home, because I think most of the time that's more likely where we'll be, and how to harden your home. We talk about, when you're a prepper, you don't talk about your preps, you don't talk about prepping, right? And I think that OPSEC is extremely important, especially when it comes to looters, right? Mobs, like I said, a little less organized. Looters, when it comes to these roving marauders, I think that's probably a better word that we might see, we'll most likely see when there's no rule of law, is these marauders out to get stuff. So that's where it'd be more of a battle rather than looters. I think we make that distinction, is so you can classify when those people come in and they're armed. Okay, these are marauders. I know what to do. Okay, these are unarmed looters. I know what to do, right? And then just identifying that and having a plan, at least in your mind, written down, preferably. Okay, this is what my plan of action if this happens.
It's interesting as we think about that. Like, here's some thoughts. Depending on where you live, you can have bird feeders all over your yard, and you can feed birds. You can also, depending on where you live, purchase a product called Tannerite. Use that information however you would, right? You can set up defensive things that look like normal everyday things, behave like normal everyday things until otherwise needed, right? It is your responsibility and duty to protect yourself and to defend yourself. When everything goes beyond mobs and looting and it's just chaos, all bets are off, in my opinion. Like, obey the law as long as the law exists. But then when it comes down to, you've got to protect your own. Like, look at other options.
Here's the thing too, is that if you, for example, let's say you're driving through a city and your car gets surrounded by a mob of people and they start pounding on the window and you're genuinely scared for your life. You've got to be able to if you hit the gas pedal and you drive through that, you've got to be able to articulate to law enforcement why you did that. And if you can, in a way that's acceptable to the law, you're going to be totally fine with you might have to go through some issues, and they're right now we're seeing a lot of these people suing, their families are suing the people, there's all kinds of stuff that you have to deal with. But just know for sure, if you can articulate and you can, that's one of the things that you talked about earlier, Shane, is that, do you have a clear mind? Are you doing it from a position where you have a clear mind? Like I have calculated all of my exit strategies, and it's either I'm dead and these guys break through the window and they get my kid and me and my wife or whatever, or I drive through and hopefully not, but potentially harm several of them. I've got to be able to articulate that. I calculated the best I could think of. I drove through it. You got to have a clear mind in some of those instances. When you're hopped up on adrenaline, sometimes you don't see all the opportunities. And that's where those lawyers can come at you and say, well, you could have done this. Well, yeah, bro, but you know what? Put yourself in that situation, and you got to be able to articulate. That's all I'm saying, is that at the end of the day, you got to be articulate why you did what you did, and in a way that is self-defense, whether it's, that's one of the great things about the Todd Nielsen and his training program, is that not only does he teach you how to shoot your gun, but he teaches you, okay, you went through the simulation. Now tell me why. I'm a cop. I just arrived on the scene. I'm the police officer, and whatever you tell me is going to determine whether or not you're going to jail tonight.
That's episode 215, by the way.
What's
one of those interviews. If you want to listen to the Todd Nelson interview where he talks about that, I believe that's 215.
That to me is a very important part of this, is that you've got to be able to articulate why you did it. So let's say you're sitting in your home and maybe you've barricaded yourself in your home. Looters are out in the neighborhood, and a looter walks in your house and you pick them off. Well, I don't think that's, you can't. A looter walks in your house. Hey, I'm defending my property here. Just so you know, if you take anything, I under the law, I feel like I'm obligated to protect myself and my stuff. So please don't take anything. Otherwise I may engage you in a way that you don't want to be engaged. If they decide to stick around after that warning, you still got to learn how to articulate that. But like, you can't just be sitting in your house like a sniper picking off everybody that comes in. That's a little different. You're going to have a problem once the police show up, if it's still a situation where civilization where the police will show up eventually. But if it's I remember reading the book, the 1 second after. Do you guys remember that book? I don't know if you read it, but there was a section in that book where the guys, the town, there was a marauding band that was going from city to city, town to town, just basically raping and pillaging as they went. And their town was the next town, and they had advance notice, and they had all these, people that were told them, hey, these guys are coming. We need to prepare. They were able to build stuff up, and it was a battle, and people died, and it was not fun to read that part of the book, but it was a realistic potential. And that is a different scenario to me, where you have that kind of that SHTF. There's no more police. There's no more, you're your own police. You're your own sheriff. You got to be your own defensive. Now that's where you can be like, okay, I'm going to give you a warning, and if you don't follow it, you're gone.
Here's a little something that I've put together for the car. If something happens in my vehicle that I need to get through a mob or whatever, I've got bear spray in there, and I actually have tear gas as well in there.
Awesome.
I can pop a canister of tear gas into the crowd, and I need to, this would be different depending on the situation, right? But yeah, if they're up on my vehicle and I feel threatened, I've got my family with me, obviously I'm going to take more drastic steps than if I'm just by myself. But those are you can order those. You can have those perfectly legal to have. Like, I know you mentioned, Paris, less lethal options. Honestly, I'm not a huge fan of less lethal options, but those are two that I've decided to employ. And also thinking your scenario again, Paris, where someone comes into your house and you're giving them a choice, right? You leave or you get shot. Part of my thought process on that is, okay, I don't want to have to deal with that person dying in my house. What am I going to do? Especially post SHTF, right?
Yeah, good point.
And so shot placement is all I'm going to say. Shot placement is key, which lets them turn around and run and get out of your house and die somewhere else, right? That's the thought. Anyway.
Good point. You create, I was speaking to Todd, I'm not going to reveal too much, but he says, I pity the guy who tries to break into my house. that's all he elaborated for me, but that's the
former
kind
law
of thing that I
enforcement,
think
you
is
put
important to
into it.
just have yourself set up so that you're gonna be okay and you'll be safe.
Well, this makes me think of Stan Pruitt from Urban Survivors. I think.
Yeah, I think that's his deal.
Um, his thing is like I've got guns. I've got lots of guns. I also have swords on my walls and shields.
Mhm.
And he even has armor, bulletproof armor behind some of the shields. But he's like, I probably won't ever get to use any of that. And the reason is I have furry death fluffies.
Mhm.
And my furry death fluffies will handle looters and mobs.
Yeah.
Right. He's got, I don't even know how many dogs he's got at this point, but he's got quite a few. And they are scary. I've met them and they are sweet and kind unless he's not there, and they are scary when he's not around. They're lethal protection. And I think that is one of the things that we overlook far too often. We buy fluff pets and stuff for companionship, and that's nice, but having something for protection, man, that's fantastic. That's actually on my list of things that I'd like to do, is get some protection animals, livestock guardian animals, as well as protection dogs for my family.
Even with dogs, though, you still have to be able to articulate to law enforcement. If you're in a situation where law enforcement will eventually show up, you still got to be able to articulate, because whatever your dog does, it's been proven in court that whatever your dog does, the owner can be held liable. Well, so it's important to just know how to articulate all that.
In addition to that is articulating everything on the phone when you're making that first initial 911 call. You want to give as little information as possible in that call so you don't incriminate yourself beyond having that actual dialogue when they get there.
Yeah.
Save it so that it's not a recorded call disclosure.
I remember one story where something happened and he gave the wife, this dude took care of an intruder. And then the wife in the background was like, you didn't have to shoot him so many times. And then 911 recorded that. They're like, so don't say incriminating things, please. That's super important.
Wait, hold on. Time out. Okay. So livestock guard protection, I'm hearing donkeys, not dogs. And prepared guy, you're telling everybody llamas?
Well, donkeys definitely are fierce. Especially when they've gotten to know their humans. They are definitely can be fierce. Llamas, I'm thinking, llamas will protect sheep. Why not protect people too?
Okay.
And then you can eat them too, and you can shear them as well. So
that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. I'd never heard of donkeys. I knew geese were absolutely amazing for home defense protection. Like they ward off a lot of things and people. My great grandmother had geese, and it was absolutely terrifying. I remember stories of salesmen getting chased off the property and horse thieves getting chased off the property by her geese. So I'm going to have to look into donkeys. This is something new for me. That's awesome. Thank you, Utah Mike, for that one.
Roosters as well. That's funny. So I don't know if this is a whole nother direction or not, but I think it's important to have some way to keep track of where the mobs are going and maybe where looters are headed. If you have one of the things I know, Scott, you've found a way to justify a drone for your preps because of something like that. And I'm totally agreement. I was actually at my church got together with a couple other people, other congregations. There was a big meeting about preparedness in our city. And one of the guys was like, hey, do you think a drone can be used as a preparedness? I'm like, absolutely. You throw that drone up in the air, you'll see where the mobs are. You'll see where they're coming, where they're headed maybe. And maybe you're completely out of the line of their, attack, so to speak. Or maybe you're right. You're next, so having some way to see. Of course, you want to have communications with other people, maybe to clarify what's going on in different parts of the city or that you live in or community that you live in. But if you're just, you and your neighbors are hunkering down, you're going to want to have something like, binoculars, drone, some vehicles perhaps that you can kind of drive quickly and see what's going on, and then drive back out, drive back home, or drive back to your base. So there's something to say about when mobs and looting is happening, that you know where it is and if it's contained or if it's spreading to become closer to where your area is. And if you live downtown, if you live in an area where you're in the center of mobs and looting, one, hunker down and defend yourself, or two, get out of Dodge as fast as you can and hope that you can come back to something that's still there. But otherwise, I would say, definitely having a drone or something like that where you can see or send it up and have it scout for you. Yeah. Spies and scouts, I think, are an important part, whether it's digital spies and scouts or whether it's you got some people that that are really good at sneaking around. They can go in and see where things are and see where the enemy is. It's good to have something like that in place, at least a plan for that kind of thing in place.
Additionally, I was going to say this: spotting scope from a high elevation, fantastic.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why we live where we live is we have an incredible view over everything around us. And it's also in a position where people will absolutely be, if they're not in a vehicle, they're not coming up this hill. They're exposed. They are going to be exhausted. I watch people try to exercise on this hill all the time. And hiking up and down it sucks. I absolutely hate it. And I do it when I have to try to help me get in better shape. But honestly, it's horrible.
Wow.
So putting yourself in a more secure place, we've got other episodes that talk about that, but putting yourself in a much more easily defensible place, a place that's out of the area where people aren't going to want to go, having, a drone, having spotting scopes, and I read this, Pete Robertucci, we had him on a few months ago, one of his books, North of Eden, the guy put up a closed circuit surveillance system all over his property, all over all the acreage he had, so he could see people with notification systems, let them know, right? He had to have power. He had solar and other backup generators and stuff. But it was in the storyline, it was absolutely critical to know what was going on and to be able to defend themselves. So having a network of people that are working with you, having tools, like that's going to come in so handy in a dangerous situation.
100%. So at the end of the day, what you need to determine is what I need to determine for myself is the scenarios. What are the scenarios that mobs and looters could put me into, whether it's a vehicle, they're surrounding my vehicle, whether they're surrounding my house, whether I'm out and about and they're surrounding me there. Like what are the different scenarios, and then run those scenarios. Like what would you do, and get your mind, because if you've run through the scenarios 2 or 3 times and then you find yourself in that scenario, you have a higher likelihood of being clear-minded and choosing the right exit strategy than you do if you'd never thought of this before and you've totally caught off guard. And then definitely as you're running those scenarios, think to yourself, okay, if I have to engage and get kinetic with somebody, how am I going to articulate why I did that? And what are the reasons that would put me in a position where I feel like that would be my only option? And that way, when you recognize those, you're like, okay, I've already thought this through. My only option is to take care of business, and you know how to articulate it, and it's your option, and you've looked at all the other options, and there's just no other way. And that's the reality of life. Sometimes people put us in positions where those are our choices. And if you've run the scenarios mentally, at least first, I think you're going to be in a much better position if you ever actually end up physically being in that scenario.
Well, it goes back to, mentally practice it, vision it, but then do it. Because while visioning or mentally practicing it is helpful, it's not wholly enough. I know I brought this up earlier in the podcast, talking about how it is very helpful. It's not as good as actually doing the drills.
Yeah.
Right. Practicing. Especially if you've got a place where you can actually live fire, because it's completely different than dry fire. It's completely different than walking around. Like I've got dummies that I'll use in training around the house, right? Completely different than actually holding and firing my sidearm. and holding and firing my rifle, or holding and firing my shotgun with buckshot in it, or holding and firing, right? It's completely different than everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to go to a place where you can actually practice that, or going and drilling those in a safe, secure location, I don't think there's really any other way to practice it to that importance.
Yeah. And I don't think you can really do it fully at a gun range. You have to go to a place like a traditional gun range. You have to go to a place where they can give you the ability to move around, have some mobility. One of the things I learned in my pistol training with Todd was he actually got us, he said, walk right up to the target, like put your hand on the pretended shoulder of the target, pull your gun like just right there, like point blank, and fire. Feel what it feels like to have the concussion of the gun and the smell of just the feeling of having that happen right there, point blank. You're shooting the target like right from 2 inches in front of you. Like it's a whole different experience than being, 20 yards out or 30 yards out. Like if you're 2 inches out, it's different. So get some good training as well. That's another plug for Todd and other people like him who have good training programs that are out there. So find one and do it.
Is there still that place near Vegas that's like you go out in the desert and you're doing tactical training in these built out buildings? Do you guys remember that place?
I don't know.
Yeah, it escapes me right
it's
now.
It's not Top Shot, is it?
No.
Oh, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's anyone that finds it and you're listening or watching this, please comment like good, fantastic places to go practice those skills.
Front sight.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, front sight.
There we go.
That and anything else. If you guys have places like that you know of, please share it in the comments on this post, because those are places where it's absolutely invaluable, because you have a professional, experienced person training you on best practices. It's fantastic. I've done some active shooter scenario trainings and it's been amazing, but honestly, it's been way too long. I need to do it again. Well, guys, I know we're up on the hour. Any final thoughts on tonight's topic before we close her out?
I think just get prepared, because I feel like unfortunately, it seems like there's going to be more opportunities in the future for this type of stuff to happen. So just be ready.
Yeah, just make a plan. I think that was when I was going over this is, of course, we're preppers. We prepare. I mean, that's what I'm a preparer. That's what we do, right? But I don't have a written plan for these, and I haven't gone through them because my plan had always been just don't be there, right? That's my plan. I think I need to dig a little deeper into that.
I 100% agree with that stance and mindset. When in doubt, get out. I don't want to be Doc Holliday. I don't want to be caught in the situation where it's when in doubt, shoot it out. Like that to me sounds insane. I don't want to live the Tombstone fairy tale. I just want to live. And if I have to engage with deadly force, I will. If I can avoid it, that is always my preference. So thank you everyone for participating tonight. It has been fantastic. We appreciate you. If you want to help support the show, go check out our friends. This is not gun related at all. Check out our friends, survivalfrog.com. They have tasty, long-term, up to 25-year shelf life on fully cooked, ready-to-eat meats. Chicken, ground beef, roast beef. It's delicious. Go get some. You will thank us later. Use the code PrepperTalk and the number 10, PrepperTalk10 at checkout. You'll get another 10% off. And they stack discounts all the time. That's survivalfrog.com. So guys, make sure you know what you're going to do before the crisis hits. Keep that head on a swivel and stay ready-minded. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Take care, guys.
See you next week.